Martin Luther said something to the effect, I don't think I'm quoting him exactly, but he said, "There are only 2 days on my calendar, today and the day I stand before Christ." And if those were really the only 2 days that existed, then I should treat today in such a way that I don't want to waste it. And if I've noticed that I can let my today be wasted by remaining in discouragement or lack of zeal, in a funk, like we heard. Today is a gem. Today is the day that we have. We have to live like today is the only day that exists, and the day of judgment. Those 2 days, and I've noticed in my own life that the reason why I can waste today is because as we heard, I'm content to remain discouraged. I'm content to remain with no passion for God. I just figure out this will pass. I just have to wait around and kind of let it pass. But that's not how I want to live. Please turn to 2 Corinthians 5. It says something there about that day. 2 Corinthians 5:10 says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may be recompensed for the deeds in his body according to what he has done, whether good or bad." As long as I can remember, since I've been a Christian, I've always thought about that day, me standing there before God, and I pictured it like I'm in line, and my turn comes up, and I'm saying, "Okay, Lord, what do you have to say about my life?" And my desire has always been to hear the words that Jesus spoke in Matthew 25:23, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's been the desire of my life. I want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." I'd have such a joy to hear those words from God. You did it. You finished your race. Well done. And I've always figured there could be nothing that could steal my joy if I heard that from God. But recently I realized that there is one thing that could steal my joy after that. And I imagined, okay, so I get this commendation from God. I'm going to be with him forever. But in the line of judgment, behind me are my brothers and sisters. What if he didn't say to them, "Well done, good and faithful servant"? What if he said, "You're coming in, but you didn't really accomplish much"? Or what if he said even worse, "Depart from me, I never knew you"? I don't think I could still have joy. And so that's when I realized my joy is tied into you guys. My joy is tied into others. My joy is tied into the people that I care about. My joy is tied into my family in the Lord. I can't have joy forever without my brothers and sisters being with me, and also getting that "well done, good and faithful servant." And I believe a lot of sincere Christians will have an attitude such that, yes, I feel about that way. That way about my family and my children. I couldn't have joy without them, but I don't really care about my church as much. I don't really know them that well. They're not really my responsibility. I think I could have. They wouldn't say it with their words, but they probably feel, I think I can have joy forever without them. Why do I have to care for them like I care for my family? And I believe there's an important answer to this, and it's because just like we have a family that we care about, those brothers and sisters in our local church are God's family, and he cares about them. Just like we have a burden for our own children, God has a burden for his children. And I believe we have to ask ourselves the very critical question, am I concerned only with my own family, or am I also concerned about God's family? We're laboring for our own children, but who's laboring for God's children? Am I concerned about his children? Am I concerned about my own spouse, but no burden for Jesus' bride? Earlier, Jeremy shared the verse in Proverbs 11, "He who waters others will himself be watered." That's such a good principle. The person with a burden for others, God will reward them with. God will have a burden for them, and I believe we can take the same principle toward our families. Those who take the time to care for God's family, God will take the time, have a burden for their family. That doesn't mean we neglect our own families while we go off and join ministry and all that, and we just ignore them. Okay, God will worry about them. I'll worry about. It's not about doing many activities, ditching our family to go about doing many activities. But it means we have a genuine love and a burden for them in addition to our own family. But how many people really care for God's family? If we really love God with all our heart, then we'll care for his family with all our heart. Matthew, you see this in Jesus' heart. In Matthew 9:36 says, seeing the people, Jesus felt compassion for them. He saw a multitude of people because they were distressed and dispirited like sheep without a shepherd. And then look what he said in verse 37. He said, the harvest is plentiful, but their laborers are few. There are so few people with a burden for God's family, the distressed and dispirited sheep. These are people that are already following the Lord. But where's the burden for them? The Christians, probably most of the burden among sincere Christians maybe lies with the lost because they're not saved yet. But look at Jesus' heart here. These sheep, they're so down and distraught, beaten down by Satan, but who has a heart for them? There's so few workers. So he said, therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send workers out into the harvest. And that's our call. We just had our conference, and pretty much every conference that we've had, almost every conference that we've had, the focus has been the local church, because we feel that it's one of the most neglected truths in Christianity today, the truth of how special the local church is. Who's God's family and who are his children? It's our local church. It's a common thought. A common thought about the local church is, why is it so important? As long as I generally love other people, the Bible says love others, right? Why does it matter if it's my local church or my friend at work? But as we heard during the conference, we can easily love God's family in Argentina. They're so far away. But how have we really cared for them? We can't care for them. But we do have some of God's family here with us in our church, and we can care for God's family here. The discouraged and distressed sheep that we have with us. Who's caring for them? Recently, I heard a true story that touched me. I forget the exact details, but it generally went something like this. There was a family man who came down with a terminal disease, and it was clear his health wasn't turning around, and he was about to go. He was about to pass away. And the family had some dear friends by their side the whole time. They couldn't do anything for him, but they made him a promise, and they said something to the effect of, don't worry about your family, we're going to take care of them. And when I heard this, I thought to myself, that was the perfect thing to say to this man. That was just what he needed to hear, as he knew he was going to leave his family. There was going to be people there to care for his family. I don't know what it's like being in that situation with little children about to go, but I can't imagine anything would give me more rest than to hear there's people who love that are going to take care of my family when I'm gone. And that'd be the heart of any good father and husband. And since God is a good father and Jesus is a good husband to his bride, his burden is, who's going to take care of my family while I'm away? Jesus said that when he left the earth to Peter. Do you love me? Feed my sheep, tend to my lambs. I'm not going to be here in person, but you are. And so Peter did. And it doesn't look exactly like we think it does all the time. A mega preacher traveling around tending lambs, giving the word such powerful sermons. The world is always looking for the next great one. Where's the next Michael Jordan? People are looking at the high school basketball stars. Where's the next Tiger Woods? We need another Tiger Woods. Golf is declining. Where's the next Babe Ruth or Albert Einstein? Science has leveled out. Nobody's discovering anything new. I know for sure that this husband and father didn't care one bit who the next great one in the world was. All he wanted was, who's going to take care of my family? And I believe God's heart is the same. He's not looking for the next mega preacher. He's looking for who's going to take care of God's family. Who's going to take care of my children while I'm away, while they're not? Who's going to take care of my children on earth? And so so Jesus said that 3 times to Peter. Do you really love me? Here's what I want you to do. Tend my lambs, tend my sheep, tend them, feed them, care for them. And I think probably most of the current Christian world is more passionate about church service than the church. There's a world of difference between the two. It's like saying a person's skin versus the person himself. It's basically, they're not even the same thing. God is not passionate about church services. He's passionate about his family. And most people, I believe, only know what church service is, but they don't know what the church is. And so that's why it's so easy to just, I want to find a church that I've been there. For most of my life, I want to find a church. I need to find the best one with a good sermon and good music, and that's the church I need to go to. This is church service. And so, but as God's opened my eyes to the church, then He's put a burden and changed my heart for what the true burden of the local church. And so, so when we see, let's say we're at the point where we see God's church, our local church family is God's family. I want to just not care. I want to not just labor for my own kids to stand in line behind me and get well done, good and faithful servant. I want to do the same for God's family. I have a burden not just for my own family. I have a burden for His family too. Let me work, spend my life. How do we do it? How do we love and care for God's family? Realistically, we live in probably one of the richest areas of the richest country in the world. I don't think anybody here is starving for food. I'm pretty sure everybody has shelter. Nobody's homeless in here. Most of us have obligations, and all of us are fed. Probably everybody has, if not most people, have access to healthcare. But how do we practically care for God's sheep if all these things are true? It doesn't really look like there's many needs. But I like what a sister shared recently here, the picture of taking somebody else's hand and placing it in Jesus' hand. My natural reaction when how to do something is list out a bunch of set of actions, but I felt like that's not the right way to preach on how to take care of God's family. I don't think we can prescribe a set of actions. Maybe there are some, but I feel that picture has helped me more than thinking about any particular action. I want to be in the business of taking other people's hands and placing it in Jesus' hand. There's so many times when people have done that for me. One time I was really weighed down for a long time in my life. I was very discouraged and lonely, and I had asked a brother a question about my situation, and he said 5 words. He said, "Pray, God can do anything." And those 5 words took my hand and placed it in Jesus' hand. It didn't take much, but that lifted me up, and it drove me to Jesus again. It gave me faith that He's with me. I'm with Jesus, and it's just what I needed for my situation. And God can use us like that for other people too. He can use us just to speak some simple word. Probably the most impactful words. Most of them may not be spoken in front of everybody. They'll be spoken in private, in conversations that you have over the phone, or some little word that you can say to a brother or sister outside of the church meeting. And so taking people's hands and placing them in Jesus' hand, that's my burden for the church, that every individual would have such a personal relationship, intimate relationship with Jesus, that they're walking with Him, holding His hand in private. A secret love life with God. That's my burden for every individual of this church. And I can't list out any particular set of methods. God does say in 1 Corinthians 14, seek the gifts that can do this, like prophecy. Seek to be somebody that can encourage others and seek for that gift. It's a spiritual gift that we need. It's not some skill that we build up. It's a spiritual gift that has to come from God. And so the main thing is to have a concern for people's spiritual good, that they'll be holding Jesus' hand. True love desires a person's best spiritually, not just physically. Yes, we don't want anybody to be poor or starving, but mostly we want people to have Jesus. And whatever physical actions or methods that manifests itself as is secondary. It'll probably look different to different people. But one thing I've noticed, though, is that it's important not to get discouraged when our labors don't have tangible results. I've felt sometimes the devil can make us feel, okay, you've been trying to do this for a couple years now as part of NCCF, and maybe nothing's really happening. God isn't really using you. You've tried to encourage people. You've tried to pray. You've tried to call this person. Are you really making a difference? I just don't know if you're accomplishing anything for God's family. Are we just wasting our time? Maybe we're not gifted enough. Satan will try to speak things like that to us. But I've noticed that it's so important to just try to the most important thing is to have this heart and try to do it, not to look at what comes afterwards. If anybody, if we look at Jesus' life, he was ministering powerfully for 3 years on earth, and by any standard of today, his ministry was a failure. So few people, after 3 years of miracles, so few people following him wholeheartedly, and even at the end, everybody deserting him. He was alone. His ministry was a failure in the eyes of most people today. They would say, close his church. And this is the world's standards. And even it's amazing to me that with regard to these results, there's a verse in 1 Corinthians 15:6 that says over 500 people saw Jesus resurrected. 500 people over, plus the disciples. So let's just say 512 people. But if you read in Acts chapter, I think it's Acts chapter 1, there were only 120 gathered in the upper room. So where are the other 408 people that saw him raised from the dead? What happened to these results? Where did everybody go? And to me, it's a lesson that Jesus, we never ever look at results to judge how effective something is. And don't get discouraged at all. And we can take a couple other verses. Isaiah 55:10 through 11. As the rain and snow come down from heaven, do not return there without watering the earth and making it bear and sprout, and furnishing seed to the sower and bread to the eater. So will my word be which goes forth from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, without accomplishing what I desire and without succeeding in the matter for which I sent it. If God put a burden on our heart and we do it, it's going to succeed. It's going to accomplish something. But it's probably better if we don't see what it accomplishes. That way we're not tempted with pride. And just keep going. Just keep going without seeing results, and say in faith, Lord, I want to live for you. I want to build up your church. I want to care for others, even if I don't see the results. And then also 1 Corinthians, another verse, 1 Corinthians 15:58. My beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable. Keep going, always abounding in the work of the Lord, even if I'm adding words right here, even if you don't see the results of the work, knowing that your toil is not in vain in the Lord. Our toil is never in vain if it's originated by the Lord, if it's for the Lord. Jesus saw such little results, but God changed the world. God saved the world through what looked like a failure to everybody else. So, like Jesus left Peter with the single word, do you love me? Tend my lambs. There are only a few elders or a couple elders in every church, but anybody can care for God's sheep, but very few do. So our challenge is to spend our life being one of those few, doing what matters. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Out of all the whole world, when Noah was building the ark, very few, just a handful of people were building it. It's very rare to find people that's going to labor for what lasts. But my challenge is to be one of those few who's laboring for what lasts, and that's God's family.